Recording in progress.
All right, good morning, everybody. Of course, I got my little allergies or whatever's going on. All right, so we left off. Probably eventually. Maybe.
Whoa.
Good throw.
Good thing I wasn't there.
You didn't hit anybody. You didn't knock over a coffee. So that's
That's the line of fire.
all right.
What page?
So we are in Daf Yudam at Bays.
Oh.
Today is Yud Aleph Yud Beis. So we left off. We had the Mishnah say. Sure, that'll be great. Thank you.
You like you take black?
Black. Yeah, thank you. Like 8 ounces.
You're the Aleph, I'm an Aleph, huh?
Yudam and Beis.
Oh.
Yudam and Beis. Right. There's 2 dots, like 5 lines from the bottom.
Mm.
So we had a Mishnah that says shtoros in the courts of V'goyim
Mhm.
of Avdi Kechavim, even though they are signed on them by Avdi Kechavim, they are they're okay. Those are ksherim, except for Gittin and Shechar Avad. And comes in Rabbi Shimon and says, no, even Gittin Hashim are ksherim in those courts, and just apparently in private, done in privacy, those are no good. But the people who sign out that are not bnei krisis. There's no shaykhs to Gittin Hashim Shechar Avad, or the bottom of Yidam at Beis, 5 lines to the bottom. So Rabbi Zera, Yoda, Rabbi Shimon, Shitasa, Shal, Rabbi Elazar. So no, Rabbi Shimon holds like Rabbi Elazar, who holds that what? Damar Edi Masira Karti. It says the main part of a get is the witnessing to the handing over of the get to the woman, not those who actually sign upon the document when it's written, rather those who view the handing over. So I even according to these other shittas that Rabbi Elazar, if let's say you don't need something, but once you go ahead and do it, then it better not be something which passes the get, i.e., you don't need witnesses on the get. But if you do, you need then you need kosher witnesses. So over here, you didn't need witnesses because you hold Edi Masira Karti, but once you have chasimas, once you have signatures upon the get, then we should say that they should be kosher edus, and over here these are avdikachavim. So hachamay skidan the shemos move hakin. Over here we're talking about where the names signed upon it are names that are known to be only goyish names, i.e., Kevin O'Brien, and the Mishnah will Gemara will state its own. And heichidami shemos muvakin, and what were shemos muvakin in those days, right? Not just the O'Briens. Some Rav Papa, Kigai and Hurmis. Of Avduni and Bar Shiftoi, or Bar Kidri, Ubati, Venakim, Una. All these names are just like examples of names, right? Christina and whatever it is, these other names that are synonymous with Avdei Kechavim. So therefore, what's the point? The point is that since people will see the names on the shtar are Gayim, they're not going to go ahead and have those people become the Edi Masira. So therefore, even though upon the get, it's these are not good signatures. Nevertheless, that's fine, because the whole worry is that we're concerned that perhaps we're going to go ahead and use those Eidim as the Eidim Masira. But since their names are Shemus Avakin, we're not going to go ahead and retrieve these individuals to be Eidim Masira.
Are we still talking about get like Isha?
Yes, this is Gittin Hashim.
Yeah, because the
Shechar
Mishnah talks about other kinds of shara.
Right. So those two were an exception. And Rabbi Shimon, you missed the first minute. And Rabbi Shimon comes in and says, even Gittin Hashim are okay as long as there's good Eidei Masira, and even if the names are real Goyish names, those are still good. That's what Rabbi Shimon said. So Gemara says, so aval shem vakin mai. So what about names that are synonymous with goyim? So my lo, that's no good. So ihachi, that's the case. Adatani seifa lo huskuru elbas ban shnasa behedya. So that which Rabbi Shimon jumps in and says, hey, we're only talking, those are, we're only talking about ones that were done in privacy, not ones in goyish courts. Let him go say even in that case. But That's only talking about names, right? That names in the courts that are are Goyish names, but names are not synonymous with Goyish names that Jews also use. Then they would not be. So Gemara says, "How can Nami come out?" You're right. That's what it means. The names that are not muvak, those are like it was done in privacy and no good. And I would say that's what it means, upsulun, and therefore those are puzzle because they have names that are not synonymous with only goy. Or viboy sema seifa asa the gite mamo. Maybe over here, that which Rabbi Shimon is actually talking about, he's not talking about gite nashim. Rather, he's talking about gite mamon, i.e., regular documents. Let's say sale documents or gift documents. V'achi kamar. Lahuskuru gite mamon de psulim. That which we said the gite mamon are psulim el bezman shnasu behedyot. Right? Gite mamon, they're assigned by goyim. Those are no good if those were done in privacy. If those not were done by the courts, because we said earlier that those were done in courts. So therefore, those are not used as the shtar for the actual transaction. Rather, those are just used as proof or reminder of what occurred before the Goyish judges. Fine. Middle of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. So Tanya Amar Elazar Bar Yaisi Kachamar Rav Shimon Lekachamim. You can see that. This is what was told Rav Shimon Lekachamim. Ksidan Lo Nechleku Rabbi Akiva Chavim Al Kol Hashtaros Ha'elim V'Kol Chavim. There was no machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Chavim on the shtaros and documents that were done in the Goyish courts. That even though the signatures upon them were of the Chavim, they are kosher. And even when it comes to Gitei Nashim Shechavadim, there's also Lo Nechleku. Those are good. There was no machlokes over there. Ela Bizman Shenasu Behedyot. Unless it was done in privacy. So those were done in court. Even the Chachamim and Rabbi Akiva, they would not argue and says, no, those are all good. Except for over there, the Rabbi Akiva machshir. And the Chachamim said, no, it's possible Gitei Nashim Shechavadim in the case of Arkos. Why is that? Over there, excuse me, they were not done in court. They were done in privacy. And even those that were done in privacy are also fine. But Malcolm Shein Yisrael Chaisman. In a place where Jews do not sign on documents, on the case where they don't sign on let's say Gitei Nashim. So the for whatever reason they didn't go ahead and sign their names on it. They wouldn't want to persecute it. There was no the Jews did not sign on shtar. So therefore, if you knew there was a get with signatures on it, you knew that these were goyim. If you know that they're goyim, therefore you're not going to go ahead and use them as your Eidei Masira, and therefore these documents are okay because once again we don't really we don't really care so much about the witnesses who sign on documents, if at all. If you don't need any, rather you just need witnesses to go ahead and view and see and witness the handing and the giving the get to the woman. But a place where Jews do sign, then you would not go over there. Why? Because their signatures on the bottom of the get. So if we go ahead and use them, perhaps they're Jewish, perhaps they're goyim. So therefore, we don't want that get to be a valid get. So Malcolm Sheni Yisrael Chaisman, Nami leagues are to Malcolm Yisrael Chaisman. I understand. So morning you go, man of the hour, right? Secretary today. So the Gemara says, I understand. We said earlier, if there's Goyish names, then because we're unsure whether they're, if they're Goyish names, which are also used by Jews, so therefore we're unsure whether they're Jews or Goyim. So therefore the get is no good. So why do we say, and because there's a Gzeira, even in the case of a normal, a Goyish name, because there might be a name that Jews use. So say the same thing over here. Why don't you make a Gzeira in a case of a place where a city where people don't sign, let's say they don't sign in Chicago. So even though they don't sign in Chicago, Chicago is always good because you're not going to retrieve those witnesses because they're goyim. But in New York, where the Jews do sign, right, it's no good. So why don't we say maybe Chicago is no good? Because if people see that Chicago, that it's good, they might go ahead and use witnesses that sign out in New York. So why'd you make Xavier there? It's like my answer is yes, names to what names, then there's a confusion. There's a confusion whether people saw, hey, this get was okay, even though they're going to sign on it, and they didn't realize the reason why is because clearly those are goyim. So therefore, that might be confusion. But when it comes to a city, right, where Jews don't sign, and that place we say is okay, so that's clearly people don't confuse the two cities. So therefore, since the city is not, we're not going to confuse, right, the context of one city to another city. There is no reason for a gezerah to say that even in a town where Jews don't sign, i.e., where we know the people who signed upon the documents were goyim, that's no good because we might confuse that in a place where Jews do sign. So therefore, we don't make a gezerah from city to city, but we will make gezerah for different types of goyish names. And Ravina Savar, the Achshuri, Bekinefusa, Daramai. So Ravina wanted to go ahead and machshir, right, documents that were done sharshtaras in a let's say in what's it called? Not court. What's when they in arbitration? Thank you. Arbitration. Let's say those documents are good. So Amar Le Rafram, no, Arkos Tanan. It says specifically Arkos. Only if it's done in Arkos, then we know the transaction happens. But if it's done in arbitrations, a document that came from there, then we don't know sharshtaras are okay. And Amar Rava High Star Parsa, Demasre Nilei Biape Sahadi Yisrael. So there was a Persian star, right? It was written in Persian, and it was not written in front of us, and then it was handed, and then it was presented, right, in front of. It was presented in front of Jewish witnesses. So let's say it was some sort of a credit, right, a loan document. So since it was given over to the person who is, hey, you can go ahead and collect this. This document is valid, right? It was a Persian document signed in privacy that it could be used to go ahead and collect from a creditor who has unencumbered fields. In other words, stuff that nobody else has a lien on or no one else bought. So Gemara says, how could you go ahead and use this as for collection? So the witnesses, right, the Jewish witnesses, typically did not speak Persian. They cannot read these Persian documents. So how do they know what was written on it? How could they just, witness, right, this document being handed over, signed by Goyim, and say that it's okay? So our answer is, but we're talking about a situation where the Jewish witnesses did understand it. For a document to be able to go ahead and be collectible, it has to be something which you cannot go ahead and forge. And their Persian documents were written on certain, paper that were easily forgeable. You can go ahead and erase. Our answer is no. When they went ahead and they covered it, I guess they sealed it with the gall nuts or whatever it is. That on the parchment, that basically once you write on it, you can't go ahead and change it. So therefore, we knew that it was not mezuyah, it was not forged, there was no alteration after it was assigned by the parties, and therefore we know it's good. But normally in a document, you need sort of like a summary at the end, and they didn't have those. That was not typical on Persian documents. So our answer is, once again, with the Mahadar, we're talking about a case where it actually was reviewed on the last line, and therefore everything is good. So if that's the case, so why just, if you go ahead and present it that says you can go ahead and collect, anything from me? If I borrowed money, you can collect anything from me, anything that's open. If let's say I borrowed on January 1st, it should even cover things that I sold after January 1st. Why just Bnei Chorim? Seems like it's pretty glot. So the answer is less clay color. No, because there was once if it's done in privacy with a Persian document, it was not something that was done, let's say, in court. Something that was done in court has a kol. It's known by people, so therefore buyers know not to buy from me. But if it was done in privacy and it was a Persian document, then somebody, and I borrowed the money January 1st, and someone might have bought fields for me post January 1st because they had no idea that I ever borrowed money from somebody else. So therefore, we protect the Meshubadim, and only the Bnei Chorim can go ahead and be collected from this, from the borrower. Fine, bottom line. So a question was asked, Reish Lakish for Rabbi Yechon. Eidiv hachasumin ala get. Witnesses that signed upon a get, and right now, l'chayra, we're talking about a get in Eretz Yisrael because it doesn't mention fanei nechta. V'shemaisan k'shemos avdei kachab. and they had Goyish names. They had names that were also used by names were
O'Connor.
well, no, not exactly O'Connor. We'll say let's say Charlie,
O'Connor and Goldberg.
Eric, right? Those names were typically those, these are names. Right? No offense to any Charlies or Erics there. And they had a lot of friends in yeshiva. Their names are the guys are Charlie and Fred and Bob, and these are guys who are, so I never heard them here in Chicago. Chicago's always like Josh, whatever. But anyways, so Mahu, what is the halacha in this case? Now remember, we said earlier, if the name is really goyish, that's actually good, because then we know we're not going to go ahead and use those people to be Eidim Asira, right? But if there's names that are right, but if they're names that could be Jewish, then you have to be nervous about it, because then they might have been goyim and they might use them to be the Eidim Asira. So Mahu, what do we say in this case? Ella, Lucas, the Lewis, right? Right, maybe Lucas and Lewis. Maybe there was one time we had a situation where a Lucas and Lewis were presented before us, right? These are names of Oikichavim, and we machshir in such a case. But Dafka, Lucas, Lewis, Yisrael, and that's Dafka, Lucas and Lewis that were not shchiach, were not common for Yisrael. The Masmah right? In other words, that Jews should go ahead and use, and therefore they knew specifically it was going. But let's say it was, a name which was, let's say, more commonly used by Jews, even though it's a Goyish name, but it was more commonly used by Jews. Right? You want to throw in there Alexander, whatever it is, right? So the Yisrael, the Masi, but something that Jews could potentially use, even though it's a Goyish name, so then that you would not have the same heter in that case, because once again, there could be confusion. So that was the case over there. So you're having a brisa talking about Medina Sayyaf, came from overseas. So he say, and there were witnesses signed on there, even though names on there were Alexander and Charlie, those are kosher. Why? Because in places outside of Eretz Yisrael, the names that were used were Goyish names. And therefore, so those names we said are okay. So what do you mean? You just said names that were used by both Jews and Goyim are no good, because you might come ahead and use them as Eidim Asira. And over here, it seems to say if it comes from Chutz La'aretz, that it's okay. So our answer is no. Over here it says the reason. It says because most of the names, so therefore there's a rove in those areas of those names that were used by Jews. So therefore, if there was a name, right, if it comes from Iraq or whatever it is, right? Well, I guess you can't use Bavel, right? Because we said Bavel was not really Medina Sayyaf. But if it comes from an area where most of the names, even though they're Goyish names, were Rov Yisrael, so therefore, if you know that a Jew signed upon it, it's okay. So therefore, because you have Rov Yisrael using it, therefore, that was the reason why that was okay. Some say the question was not in a case of where we ask about Eretz Yisrael. Right, they actually was a case of where we asked in the case of Medina Sayyam, who Pashavein was this, and therefore they answered from this price over here that that since over here since we have Rov Yisrael has Shmosei and Kishmos of the Kachavim, therefore the case is good when the get comes with two signatures that appear to be Goyish, because most people in those places were Jews who had those types of names. Fine, Mishnah. Naya Mishnah. Ha'aymer tein get zel ishti. The shtar shichur zel avdi. One who says, I go to Yigal, I say, give this get, please, to my wife, or give this shtar shichur to my husband. So Imra to lachsar. So Yigal doesn't get around to it. He says, okay, I'll take care of it tomorrow. No problem. I'm a little busy today. Got the Chlan Sefer Torah. I'll take care of it tomorrow. Imra to lachsar. If he wants to go ahead, if I want to be ahead of Yichayzer, b'shnehem, either one of them, Yachzer, I can go ahead and say he didn't give it yet. So, okay, you still have those documents? Yeah, I told you I was going to give it tomorrow. I said, you know what, I'll take them back. Divrei Meir. Says Rameir, you can do that.
There was the exact case in the previous mission.
I'm sorry.
We have this exact case in the previous mission.
Pre.
Where he said, I want to take it back or.
Oh, is that remember? Let's see. Closer to the- Which case? Which case?
Kev was given.
Shkim, well, the Shkimra is a Tnu. Well, it wasn't the Mishnah though. Right? It was in the Mishnah or just the Gemara. But right, one could be chayzer by Matan Shkimra, whether that was specifically done. But we did bring in this Mishnah earlier. We actually did bring this Mishnah in earlier.
That's how I remember.
Yeah. See, Bays. Yeah, Le'el Testament Bays. Yeah, then Testament Bays. Now, Chavim the Gite Nashim. The Chavim say, yeah, by Gite Nashim I can be chayzer. However, aval loy v'shich ravadim, but not shich ravadim. If I free my slave, that does not work. He does not. He cannot give it back because the slave is basically already free. What's going on here? Lefi shezach l'adam shelo b'fanav ve'en chavin lo ela b'fanav. So we have a concept that if I'm doing something which is beneficial, complete beneficial for someone else, I can do it without their consent. So therefore, in the case, this is the chacham. In the case of the Eved, it's completely a good thing. So therefore, when I give Yigal the shtar, he's basically does a zchus, a zechia for the Eved, because it's a completely good.
On behalf.
But
It's
that's
chus. Right. But when it comes to the woman, it's not a good thing to be divorced. So therefore, that's a chavin. That's sort of a bad thing. So you can't do a bad thing. Right. Oh, we'll get the Quran. Very good. Except for when it comes to a woman, it's more of a chov. It's a bad thing. So therefore, you can't do a bad thing on someone's behalf without their consent. You can't be a shliach for something. Only for a zchus.
You don't need the license.
I'm sorry?
You don't get, it's not qualified, you don't need a license.
Right. There has to be a Kabbalah. She still has to receive it. Right. Yeah. But right. She does not need her consent. She doesn't have to agree to it. Right. But anyway. So over here, since it's not a good thing, so he can't be zeicher to her. It only works when it comes in her hand. Therefore, it didn't get in her hand yet. So therefore, I can go ahead and retract. So Zmachloik is basically when it comes to Shechar Avadim. Rameir says you can still take it back. I'm saying no, it was a zchus. You already, you already basically send them free. Why? What's the difference? If a person doesn't want to go ahead and feed his slave, he can. But if he doesn't want to feed his wife, then he cannot because these obligations that are written in his ksura. Well, what do you mean? His Eved was eating truma right now because his master was a Kohen, and now by freeing him, you can no longer eat truma. And just like he passes his wife from there. He says, yeah. Silly. You know why he can't eat true anymore? Because he was he was owned by him. So he's not owned by him anymore. So he can, okay, fine, he can't have truma, but yeah, and echanami, but he still has all his freedoms.
Better to be free.
Right, and then be his possession. So the reason why I can't true is not his possession anymore. That's not a reason to say it's not his zechus. So that was the Mishnah. We're going to soon see a similar interaction between the two in the Gemara. Zok the Gemara. So Yasiv Rav Huna Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Kamei the Rabbi Yirmiyah listened for Rabbi Yirmiyah. Yasiv Rabbi Yirmiyah become an amnei, and Rabbi Yirmiyah was dozing off. The Yasiv Rav Huna become Rav Huna was saying, look at this Mishnah. Shnami number the Rabbanan. Let's learn from the Rabbanan of our Mishnah. Hatoifes lebal choiv kana. One who goes ahead. Let's say Avrami owes. Actually, Avrami is usually owed money. He's owed money. So let's say Avrami is owed money by Randy. All right. And so Tofis Labalcho, meaning Randy owes money to Avram. And I see Randy, and Randy has $100 in his wallet. I'm allowed to go ahead and take and seize $100 from Randy and give it to Avrami. So Tofis Labalchov, Kana. So I went ahead and I took for someone who was owed money. So I can go ahead and take it from Avrami, even though he didn't make him as a shliach. I went ahead and took it. We learned that from our Mishnah. Why is that? Right? Because basically, Yigal in our case was taking the freedom, right, of the Eved from me. Similarly, right, I was taking the money from Randy to Avrami. Now, even though Randy says, hey, I want my money back, but Lamaisa, it wasn't
forced it.
really his, but I took it. So too over here, even though, I like having an Eved, but you're able to go ahead and take the Eved from me. Well, what about, let's say Randy owes money all over town, right? He owes $100 to Eddie, right? To Zevi, to everybody, right? He owes money over town. Am I allowed to do it? So I'm like, yeah, he owes at least money to Avrami, so I take Avrami. So yeah, of course, it puts Eddie and Zevi in a worse position because now Randy is $100 less, but I'm still allowed to do it. So meanwhile, he's talking about Rabbi Yirmiyah woke up. So Amar Lu, and he heard what they were saying. He says, Darniki, children. One who goes ahead and takes from a Baal Chov, from a Bauer, or a person who has creditors, where he owes others, lo kana. He has not acquired it. No, it is not true what you said. Mishnah say no. If you want to say, look at our Mishnah. So in our Mishnah, right? So I'm saying, hey, why are you taking away the Eved, right? So look how you're taking away the Eved, even though I want the Eved back, as I was basically, it's still like I own him. It's like a credit to me, and you're taking him away from me. So our Mishnah is different. Why? Because kol ha'omer tenu ka'omer zechud dami. When I say tenu get zeh la'avdi, it doesn't just mean go ahead and give. It means be zoichet on his behalf. So when I say be zoich on his behalf, he's zoich on his behalf the minute I give it to Yigal on Sunday. It's not he's zoichet when he hands it to him on Monday. It's once it comes in his hand, then he can be zoichet for the Eved. Now in the case of the Uber doesn't work because it's not zechus. But in the case of the Eved, kol omer tenu, because zechudam. So I'm Rav Chisda. Hatayv is the Ba'alcha b'makom shechav l'cherim. It's actually Banan l'machlokas Rav Eliezer Rabbanan. It's actually Rav Eliezer Rabbanan. The Tanai with the Mishnah Misha liket esapeya. So a person was going ahead and he was collecting peya in a field. He was going ahead and collecting corn, and he's not. Let's say he's not on it. So he's by a field. He sees stuff left in the corner. He says, "Oh, I can go ahead and give it to my neighbor who's an ani." So this goes to my neighbor, my poor neighbor Bob, right? Rabbi Eliezer, it works. Since it's supposed to go to Aniyim, you want to give it to a specific Ani, you can go ahead and do it. I can take it for this Ani. He's an Ani, and I'm going to give it to the Ani. He walks past other Ani. Hey, give me this, give me the pay. I just saw you pick it up. Yeah, and you're a rich guy. No, I took it from my neighbor Bob. So Rabbi Eliezer says, Zachalo, he can do it. No, it's first come, first serve. You can't go ahead and take it for another ani. Now, this seems to be a case of money is quote unquote due to all anim. Right? It's like Randy owing money all over town, right? So therefore, I can't go ahead and take it, for one person because it's owed to many people. It's first come, first serve. So to over here, that's how it works by pay. So maybe that's the machlokas over here, which is hatavis lebachol. That's the machlokas.
Can the fellow that harvests for Reuven, he's this worker, and he see pear. Right. Take it, oh, my neighbor is poor. You can.
So according to Chachamim, you can't take it. You can't take it for someone specifically. No. We'll soon see how the darshan psud. So Amar Meir v'Timur Rav Papa. So it says Meir subsidiaries Rav Papa.
All have a shaykhs.
Right. They're like creditors to the
and they're all equal.
Correct.
And they have to be in the.
So Rabbi Eliezer says you can take it. Rabbi Eliezer says it works. I can take it. And Chachamim say you cannot. So the Gemara says no. Maybe this is not the same. Maybe case of pay is a little different than a regular case of atavis abakov b'makom shchav da'acher. Why is that? Dilma lohi. Ad kan lo yikamen Rabbi Eliezer hasam ela demigo di by mafker l'nechse v'haviani v'chazile. Then maybe over here, I'm going ahead and collecting the field. I'm collecting for my neighbor, but technically, if I really wanted to, I could take it for myself. How? I have $7,000. I say, all my nechasim are hefker.
Right.
Done. I don't own anything. Now I'm poor. I can take it for myself. So since I can go ahead and be mafker all my nechasim and become an ani and I can take it for myself, So since I go ahead and take it for myself, I can take it for my friend. So therefore, that's the reason, right? Why Rabbi Eliezer says I can take it for my friend.
You take it to yourself, but you share it with your friend.
No,
That's what it is.
but I don't even have to take it for myself. I don't even have to become an ani to take it. Since I have the ability to be an ani,
Right.
therefore I have the ability to acquire it because I can acquire it for myself. So therefore I can acquire it for somebody else, even if I don't become
The
half.
point is that you're ani now and you can
No,
take it.
you don't
That's
have
the
to.
point. It's not what you do afterward, it's your business.
It's the words. Since I could do it and acquire it for myself, therefore I can acquire it for my friend. I don't have to do it that way.
Exactly. So the point
Since
is you can acquire it yourself.
I could if I wanted to. So since I have the ability to acquire it for myself, now when Randy owes money all over town, okay, but he doesn't owe me money, I don't have that same argument. I can't say since I can take the money from me, I can take it for Avrami. That doesn't work. But Avrami actually would work in that case. He could say, since Randy owes money to Avrami and Eddie, so Avrami could actually take the money from Randy and give it to Eddie, according to this Svar. Right? Because he's owed money. But if I'm not owed money, I can't get involved. Stay out of it. But over here, everybody is shaykhs to pay him. But in a regular case, low. You would not say that since I have no shaykhs with Randy, it wouldn't work. And maybe the reason over there why the Rabbanan say it doesn't work, you can't go ahead and give others, right? To Liani. It says, lo Liani. No, it's maybe there's a special halacha where it says that you cannot go ahead and harvest for an ani. It says specifically you can't take for another ani. An ani wants to take it, they take it themselves. But I can't take it for another ani. That doesn't work. Right? You're not allowed to do it for somebody else. Special halacha when it comes to payah.
Yeah.
No shaykhs with
Read the whole passage.
That's the pasuk. So it says over there, right, that over there you have to leave it, right? You can't get involved. You have to leave it to Azov for the ger the yad.
That's if it's yours.
Okay, good. All right, I hear. So, but the Rabbanan don't learn it that way. But let's see. Let's say about Hacha over here. Lo is no shaykhs. It doesn't. There's no special restriction on me taking Randy's money. They're not going to take Randy's money. Rabbi Eliezer, hi, let's lucky my afi. What do they do with that pasuk? So lahazir laani al shalom. Rabbi Eliezer learns that pasuk completely differently. He says, you know what that pasuk is talking about? That pasuk is talking about if a poor person owns a field, he's not allowed to take his own pay, right? So that's what Eddie actually hinted at a little bit. Your own field. Now, it doesn't mean that you take your field to others. Rabbi Eliezer learns that if I have a field and I'm an ani, I can't go ahead and take it, right? So laani al shalom. That ani, a person can never take any payoff from their own field. Fine. Period. 2 dots. If a person wanted to go ahead and not feed his eved, he can do that. And if a person wanted to not feed his wife, he cannot do that because he has obligations from the ksuba. So that's clearly the difference, the big difference between why being freed as an ani is a zechus and being freed as a woman is a chayv. So Shema Mina, Yochel Rav Leimar LeEved, Asei Mi V'Ini Zanech. Let's learn from here, which is a Achloikes throughout Shas, right? Let's learn from over here that a master can tell his Eved Kanani, right? Do for me, work for me, and figure out how to feed yourself. I'm not feeding you, but your wages go to me. So let's learn from here. Why? Because we just said that you can say to your Eved, work for me, and I'm not paying. When it says no, say my no, we're talking about over here where he says, hey, right, I'm not, you keep your wages and you pay for yourself. So So I understand when it comes to a woman, a person could also say to his wife, hey, I'm not supporting you, but you can keep your wages. So when can you not do that? Am I low? So let's say by a woman, there's not enough. Her earnings are not enough to feed her, right? To feed her, she needs $50 a day, and she only earns $40 a day. So therefore, it doesn't work. So why? Okay, so what in the case of the Evan? right? He needs $50 a day, and he only makes $40 a day. So the Gemara says, "Avda the num karise lo shavi lamar." The Gemara say, the Eved is only worth, right, the his stomach to his master. In other words, nobody would have an Eved, right, that it's more expensive, to keep him than the benefit of it. So in other words, if he can't figure out how to at least earn his own wages, in other words, to at least to make $50 a day, then that's on him. That's on the master. The master doesn't have to supplement that, right? So that's on him. So therefore, but a woman, she says, I can't make enough. Okay, so she's my wife. I have to go ahead and supplement that. But if a slave, then nobody is going to go ahead and keep a slave if the expense of holding on to them is more expensive than the benefit that they get from it. So Toshma, come and listen. So Eved Gilul Miklat. So an Eved who went ahead and accidentally killed somebody, the Shogeg, and flee to an Arei Miklat. He went to a city to get protection. Ein Rabo Chayv L'Zayno. His master is not obligated to go ahead and feed him. La'od Ella Shemaisa Yadav L'Rabbo. But not only that, but his Maisa Yadav, gets Venmo daily to his master. Wow. So Shema Mina, what are you learning from over here? Because you see over here, the master gets the wages, and the master does not have to go ahead and feed him. So Shema Mina, Yachol Ravle Marle Evet Asei Mi Beni Zanech. Let's learn from here that a master can go ahead and say to a servant, you work for me, and I don't go ahead and support you. Now over here we're talking about a case where he says, okay, you keep your wages and you feed yourself. Well, you just said Maisi Yadav go to his master, and how did Maisi Yadav don't go to his master? So the answer is La Dafa, the extra, the overage. The guy needs $50 a day to eat, and he earns $100 or $75 a day. So therefore, every day he sends $25 to his master. So Gemara says, Hadafa Pshita, it's obvious. If he says, hey, you work your wages, he only works up to his meal. Anything over to the master's yet. So Malay Mojiv said, maybe if he earns only $50 and he eats $50 and he doesn't send anything. So maybe Nami. Maybe also if he earns 75 and he eats 50, he gets to keep 75, the slave. So maybe he doesn't take them. So Kamash Malan, then he has to go ahead and send it to his master. If that's the case, so why are we talking about Arei Miklat? What's this chiddush over here, right? Arei Miklat. So it says the word v'chai. The end of the pasuk says, right, when he goes over here to flee, right, to one of the cities, v'chai, and he lives. You have to allow them to live in these Arei Miklat. So maybe since we have a special commandment to let them live in Arei Miklat, right? Okay, we'll let him live, meaning he gets to keep even the $75. He can live nicely in Arei Miklat. So Kamash Malon, that no, any overage is nothing. You get nothing, no special privileges in Arei Miklat. You got to send anything you earn over your meals back to your master. The Habitani Seifa, the Seifa over there says about Isha Shagal Sel Arei Miklat. What about a woman who kills someone? She goes to Arei Miklat. Baila Chaim Asasel. Her husband is obligated to support her. Michlal to Amar. So implied from here that we're not talking about a case where he says, hey, you keep your wages and you pay for your own food, because over here it's saying he has to pay for her food. Why is he paying for her food? It must be that she's able to, because she's sending him his wages, right? Or her wages, excuse me. He didn't make a deal with her. Because if the husband did say, hey, you pay for your own meals and you keep your wages, am I chayv? Why would the husband be obligated to go ahead and pay for her meals? It must be that since she's sending, right, since he's paying for her meals, it must be she's sending her paycheck to him. And by the fact that the Seifa, right, which is talking about the wife, he did not make a deal with her. Right? We're talking about this, the Seifa, right? Actually, the ratio with the Eved is also not talking about a case where they made a deal, right? I'll send, also where he said, you keep yours and you keep your wages and you pay for your own meal. So it must be this case where there was no deal. If there was no deal, then why? Then once again, it comes back to the question of if there was no deal, then it appears that he doesn't have to support him, but his wages go out, that the master can go ahead and say, I'm not supporting you, but send me your paycheck. So the Yelam, the Amarle, really there was a deal. The Isha, the Lay Safka, and over here we're talking about the woman, she didn't make enough. That's why the master her husband has to go ahead and send. We said if the master ever says, hey, go ahead and earn your own, right? And then you keep your own wages and you pay for yourself, that he's allowed to do it. Right? And it must be then the ratio. Also, he didn't say to her. So the says, no, if it's enough, right? Right? So if she's able to go ahead and earn enough to pay for her food, right? Then he's allowed to go ahead and say, keep your wages and pay for your own food. So Maspekas Lamai the Namra. So I understand what's the chiddush here. So what Mojo just said, Kol Kvoda Bas Melech Panima. Maybe you'd say like this: since she's in a new town, and even though her wages, she can cover her meal, maybe you'd say like this: it's not appropriate for her to go out and be hustling in a new town to go ahead and make money to pay for herself. Maybe he's not allowed to, even though technically, financially, she can do it. But maybe it's not, it's not a nice thing for a husband to go ahead and, tell his wife, she's like she's a Bas Yisrael, right? So maybe you can't force her to go ahead and earn her own living. So Kamash Malad, he is allowed to go ahead and force her. The only time he has to go ahead and send her food is if she does not make enough. So Lema, they all work. Yeah, right. So Lema Kitanoi. So everyone's basically machlokes tonight. So let's say this machlokes of whether he could say to his slave, right, you will work for me and I will not support you. And you want to eat tough noogies, figure it out yourself. So Lema Kitanai, Rishon Gamliel Oimer, Yachola Eved Leimar LeRabbi B'shnei B'tzoros. A slave can tell his master in years of famine, oh Parnasani, oh Hotziana L'Cheros, either support me or set me free. Harashus Biyad Rabbo says so. According to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the servant can basically, the Eved can make a demand, either set me free or support me in the years of famine. Come say, no, the master does not have to go ahead and make a decision. He'll say, I don't know what he's saying, continue to work, right? Just be ad rabbo. So my lava, what's the machlok? That according to Chachamim, they say, hey, you work for me and I'm not supporting you. Figure it out yourself. One says, no, it's not. He cannot do it, right? Either, set him free or, give him the full amount. If he doesn't make sense. So I understand. Well, what's this ultimatum? Either support me or set me free. It should be either support me or give me my wages so I can go ahead and pay for myself. That's what it should have said. And furthermore, also, what does that do with the years of famine? So over here, this is machlokes here. He told them, go ahead, you know what? You've been working for me now, work for yourself right now, keep your wages and pay for your own meal. However, when it comes to years of famine, where basically he wasn't able to support himself, to feed himself with his own wages, the slave was not making enough, he was going hungry. So Rav Shimon Gamliel Savar, he's allowed to go ahead and say, either give me enough so I can eat while I keep my wages and give me more so I can basically eat a full meal, or set me free. What does setting you free help you out? Because people will see that as a free guy. Hey, I'm still starving. People, will give me people will have Rahmanas on me and give me charity and I'll be able to eat. So therefore he says, either you give me that extra or free me so I'll be able to get extra from other people. For Rabban Sabri, no. No, so you say no. That people have rachim and free people also have rachimim upon avodah. Fine. So Tashmak goes to Damarav Hamakdish Yidei Avdo. One who goes ahead and sanctifies the hands of his Eved. In other words, anything that his Eved does, the money goes to the Beis Hamikdash, right? It goes to Hektish. So Isa Eved, so that slave, Loiva v'oichel v'oisa upareh. So how does he go ahead and eat? Because he can't go ahead and work his Masa Yada. His Masa Yada goes to hektish, right? So basically, what does he do? He borrows food to eat. He eats, and then he does work and he pays it off. He pays it off through he borrows, eats, right? Because he can't work and use that money for eating because that money goes to hektish. So he has to borrow and eat. And how does he pay the person who back? Pays the person back by working off. Now, how does he work it off? So the Gemara explains later on is the hektish only acquires something which is shava pruta, the worth, the value of a pruta. So every time he works a pruta, it goes to hektish. So over here, he pays it back in half prutas, right? So therefore, technically, it goes half prutas. So therefore, that's the way to pay it back because the hektish does not acquire that money yet. All right, so that's the Gemara later on, but that's a way at least to understand it at this point in time. So over here you see that since he's basically saying your hands are hektish, I am donating it. So I'm donating, but the master should be feeding him, but he's not feeding him. So what do you see over here? The master is allowed to go ahead and use the guy's wages without feeding him, because over here we're making him go ahead and borrow from somebody else and work it off. So over here we're talking about where he's giving him mazonos. See, hachi. So what do you mean? Lamai loiva v'eichel. Why does he need to borrow to eat? He's already being fed by his master. So my answer is la dafa for the extra amount. V'lei malei hektish. So let the hektish say this. Ad hashta sagi le bla dafa. Hashta navi dis gila dafa. Right? Until now, right? So let them say that no, you can't go ahead and start borrowing and then paying other people with your work. Until now, he didn't need to do that. So any other work should really go to hektish. So hektish gufa nichalek yehechid v'yishpech abed. The hektish actually likes the fact that he needs his hadafa because in the end he's I guess making himself healthy. And therefore, with his goof bari, he's able to go ahead and do better work, and therefore they will be profiting from it. So he says over there he works and he pays it back. So kama kadish lei. I understand. Each time he works, each pruta goes to the hektish. So my answer is pachas b'shevet pruta. No, when he pays back in half prutas increments, and therefore that's the way he pays it back. And hachi nami mistarba. This is also logical to say that we're talking about a case of where the master actually is feeding him and he's just borrowing for the extra, and the master cannot go ahead and say to him, hey, you work for me and I'm not paying it back. Why? Another case, it was makdish, the work of his slave. That Evan can go ahead and do, right? He can go ahead and he can work and then use that, and use that work to go ahead and eat. Because if he doesn't go ahead and feed himself, who's going to feed him? So now, this works out if we want to say that case earlier that we had, right? Where we said the bottom of the previous Amud, where he was loiva v'eichel. If we say that case, where over here the master is not allowed to go ahead and tell them, hey, you figure out yourself. Rather, the master is supporting him. And over here, so in the case where the master says, hey, I'm paying for you, and he wants extra, so therefore he has to go ahead and borrow. And this case talking about where he says, I'm not giving you food. If I'm not giving you food, then you can do it yourself. Therefore, his work doesn't become hektish. The master said his hands are hektish. Yeah, his hands are hektish, but not when it comes to his food, because he has to go ahead and support him. So his first thing is always supporting him. So therefore, his wages aren't hektish because the master's not supporting him. And the other case, Shapir. So therefore, it works out well. But if we're talking about the first case, is where he's allowed to go ahead and say, hey, I'm not supporting you, and therefore I'm not giving you food, and he can do it. Right, I understand. What does it mean that if he doesn't go ahead and work for himself, who's going to go ahead and work for him? Right? Whoever wants to go ahead and give him. In other words, if the master doesn't have to go ahead and pay him, so nobody else has to go ahead and pay him. So therefore, that's not the proper response. Rather, learn from here that indeed a master cannot go ahead and tell his servant, hey, I'm not supporting you, but I'm still taking your wages. However, there's another opinion. So Tashma comes in Rabbi Yechanan, one who goes ahead and he cuts off the arm of the Eved of his friend. Naising Shifto Refuaso L'Rabo. He gives his I guess disability, right? And he gives his refuah, his the cost for the medicine to the master. V'oisa Eved Nizon Minat Tzedakah. And the Eved, who does he get paid from? Not from the master, from charity. So Shmami no Yachol Rav Le'mar LeEved Asay Miven Izanech. We can learn from over here that he's able to go ahead and tell the master, because over here, right, the master is basically getting his work, i.e., he's getting his disability, right, and he's not going ahead and supporting him. Hey, Evan, you want to eat? Well, you go ahead and go to the local charity. So Gemara says, no, that's not necessarily a good proof. We're talking about where he's giving him food. He's giving us, you just said he's supportive of tzedakah. So that means the adafa for the extra amount. He wants second double portions. Nizon, should say nizon, niz parnes. I should use the word niz parnes. And that's the proper lashon for the overage, the extra. Elalav shmamina yachol shmamina. Rather, indeed, learn from here that he's able to go ahead and basically take his wages or his disability and not go ahead and be supportive. And Amar Naisen Shifta Refusal the Rabbi. He goes ahead and gives his, the Sheves and the Refuah to the master. So Shifta, Pshita, right? The disability is supposed to be working. So if he's not working, the money goes to the master. So Gemara says no, Refuah is strictly eating the kids Refuah. Why? Refuah did you understand? So the pain and the medicine and the treatment, the medical bills, should belong to the slave because he pays for them. So the boy is suyebe, right? In order for him to go ahead and heal. So Gemara says no. Right? So they assessed him. Go ahead, basically 5 days off. He'll be back to work. And he says, you know what? But if you do a real aggressive treatment, we can do it in 3 days. It's going to be more painful, but you'll be able to start working in 3 days. So therefore, that really the tsar is the slaves, and the slaves can say, hey, we're going to give him the regular treatment for 5 days. So Kamash Malon. So therefore we say, Kamash Malon, no, the master can insist, hey, I'm going to get you back on the road, right, in 3 days on more aggressive, painful treatment. But you know what? This way you'll be back. So it's the master's choice to do it. So therefore, that's what it means the refuah goes to the master. It means the master can say, hey, we're going to give you the more aggressive treatment, and therefore you're going to be back working for me in no time. Isn't that great news? Right. So Tanya, we're going to Amru Lo, Lemeir. Hello. So now we're sort of going back to what we said in the Mishnah. So he said, Lemeir, he said to Lemeir, remember who says in the case of the Shtar Shikhr that, hey, you can still go back on it. It's not always good for the Evid. It says, he gets freedom. So Milano, he said, no. Because if he was a slave of a Kohen, he passed for Shuma. So if he wants to go ahead and not support him, he's able to, and therefore he doesn't get his Shuma. So Milano, ilu Eved Kohen Shaborach. Let's say, okay, what about this scenario? You have a slave of a Kohen and he runs away, or a wife of a Kohen and she runs away. So wherever they're hiding, they can be truma halachically because the master, right, he still owns them, but they're eating truma. So therefore, it's bad, right, for them to wherever they are not to be enslaved or not to be married. Right, so he said now you can no longer eat if you made him free. But however, the woman is a chofer because she has lost, right, her truma, and she's lost out of her mazonos. So that was the conversation between Rameir and Chanun. So my kamilei, my kamahadr lahu. So what did they say to Rameir, and what did he answer them? So this means this I understand the brayso. This is what he said to her. Havshtani al mazainos. You answered to me on a mazainos, and as you said that if the husband or so the master does not want to go ahead and support his slave, he's allowed to. So what do you say about the truma? So if you want to say, okay, so he can pass him the truma anytime he wants because he can just throw him a get upasale, and then it says you can no longer have because he frees, you can no longer have truma. So shavikle avari va'azil alma. Okay, but that's the case. You can say if he gives him a get shikhr, he can no longer have truma. So yeah, but what happens if he runs away? If the eved runs away, then he can't do that to him because he has to give him the get shikhr. Right? So what if they run away? How likely can you tshuva? But this slave, right? In other words, if we say that Yigal in the case the shliach gets their freedom, then he actually hurts them because wherever they are, they can still be eating truma. But now that someone did zuchus for them, thank you so much for freeing me. I can no longer eat that yummy truma. So Shapir Kamarlu. So it seems like a good argument that Rameir is saying. So Rava, no. That no, because look at the words of the Mishnah. Mipnei hu kinyano, because he is his possession. What does that mean? Di by shakil arbazuzim Yisrael. He says, you know what I can do? That my slave thinks he's so smart, he's eating shroom wherever he's at. Here, Eddie, you're Yisrael here. So why don't you give me 4 zuz and I'll sell you him, my slave. Now you own the slave, and now he's no longer owned by a Kohen. He can no longer eat truma. So don't give me an argument that you're passing from truma because he can only be present to be passed from truma. No, I can pass it from truma by transferring to my friend who's not a Kohen. So therefore, you can't give me the argument that him losing on truma is a good thing. So finally, real quick, we have a minute. You're a mayor, right? Tinach Eved Kohen. So according to mayor, okay, Rameir, you even argue, we're talking about Eved Kohen, he loses on truma. Eved Yisrael Ma'iklim. They would say Eved Yisrael, some Rabbi Yishmael, but Rabbi Yitzchak Mibnei Shmavsido Mishivcha Kananis. He's losing out in Shivcha Kananis. He has, as an Eved, he can be with the Shivcha Kananis who's also owned by the master. So it says, Adrabah, Harehu Matira Bas Chayr. What do you mean? He's now able to go ahead and marry a Bas Yisrael. So Abda Befker Nichele Zile Shchichele Pritzele says no. The Ama Ivria, excuse me, the Shivcha Kananis is basically she's a little more znus and she cheapens herself to him. So therefore, the pritzes of the Shivcha Kananis is more valuable to him than being able to marry a Bas Yisrael. All right, we'll stop here.